pick some winners here in the college football streets. We got an hour before lock, so you know what? Let's talk about this slate here at Stokastic. No better time to get into it. We're going to talk about all the games on the slate. What you need to know to make some money. We'll talk about what's going on in the industry. We'll also have some fun. That's the most important thing. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski is with me. We're braving the elements. It's raining, even though we do the show indoors, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But at the same time, I just wanted to point that out. Hope everybody is having a good morning. We are here to help you guys build your college football lineups. Sir, we got a handful of games, as we always do. Some big spreads have emerged. How you feeling? You seem upbeat this morning. I think you have the magic lineup in the crunch.
Yeah, I just had a lot of caffeine. I also just bet North Texas because Temple's quarterback, E.J. Warner, is not warming up. Get that in if you can. But yeah, that's not relevant to DFS.
It's relevant to me, though.
Relevant to me as well.
What'd you get him at 6?
Took him at 5.5.
Okay, a little 6 action. Never heard anybody on the show. We are in there. And that's the kind of news that we're going to be breaking on this show, whether it's the Ohio State backfield, which we will get to, or anything unexpected. We'll get to that as well. Before we dive into the games, first of all, I see all the regulars in chat. My people, appreciate you guys. If you want to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're marching towards 100,000 subs on the Stokastic channel. We couldn't be more excited. I like to ask you every time, though, a couple standard questions. Are you feeling a dual quarterback with the Superflex? Are you feeling that this is soft pricing, tight pricing? What are the opportunity costs as we work through the games?
Yeah, it's tight pricing. They did the opposite of what we saw last week, where we had the LSU game priced way down. So the key to winning was just jamming that game. It's much harder to play Oregon-Washington today, but I think the pricing allows for enough value where we can still get pieces of the game. Still tight pricing. I still made sure to get 2 quarterbacks in every lineup. There's a lot of really good signal callers. So if you're putting a running back in the flex, there's going to be some opportunity cost. And then, yeah, you mentioned the big key to this slate, which we don't have yet. Does Trevion Henderson play? He changes everything because of the price point on Chip Trayanum. We'll break that down and hopefully get some concrete information. I know Henderson's been practicing, and I think he's warming up right now, but still a game-time decision. It's not really a game that Ohio State cares about. They don't have Ibuka already. So I don't know. Maybe we see the full Chip Trayanum show again and he carries 20 times and slams into the back of his own line for another 60 yards. Or maybe he has more efficiency. Last week was pretty brutal.
Last week was very brutal. They lived pretty dangerously with the Maryland squad, who we will talk about on this slate. Yes, and you know, a friend of the show, Dustin, was asking, not related to this, but with Duke, Riley Leonard is in fact doubtful, right?
He's doubtful. He was in a boot earlier. I would be shocked if he plays.
Okay, yeah. That's why I caught that spread too, and I was just like, something's not right about this, so I just wanted to pass that along. Let's get into these games. Syracuse and Florida State, near 3 touchdowns down in Tallahassee. We look to this, the Orange, you know, they're a middling team, and Florida State's got national championship vibes. We're already getting questions about how would you stack with Travis? Where does he fall in the quarterback rankings? Talk to me about the Noles and then what you see from the run backs with Syracuse.
Travis is pretty high. He's my 5th most exposed quarterback. Big spread here, but that also brings a big implied team total if they get pushed at all. Situations I really like to target on slates like this. Did not work last week, but having Johnny Wilson out, that kind of creates an avenue for a very clear top stack with Jordan Travis to Keon Coleman, who should dominate targets here. And then there's a void behind him. I don't think it's clear what Florida State does with their secondary pass catchers. They've had a lot of injuries, but now players are back. So you have Ja'Kai Douglas back. You have Kentron Poitier back. Winston Wright was banged up and playing a situational role. He'll be active. And it's not just that. Last week, nobody knew this, but Jaheim Bell was injured coming into the game. They only had a select couple packages where they used him. Has his health improved enough where he's back into a full-time role? I don't know. It was a lot of Kyle Morlock, and Jaheim Bell had like 10 snaps in the entire game. So he's even hard to use right now. Jaheim Bell is very cheap, so he's the guy I'm looking to second if it's not Keon Coleman, just based on talent, and then the hope and a prayer that he's fully active for the game. But very difficult to stack beyond Keon Coleman. If I were ranking a second player, it would be Destin Hill. He's been playing ahead of all those guys I mentioned who are coming back from injury. Excuse me.
All right. I need you alive because I
Am I
can't
here? Did
Yeah,
I
yeah. Oh,
break up?
no, you're here.
Okay,
I thought
it was just
I thought you were
my.
choking to death. I just wanted to make sure you didn't die on the stream.
No, I thought it was my internet for a second.
No, it
Choking
was
is
your
better than
throat.
no internet.
Yeah. No, well, that's debatable. Um, in that backfield, I just want to ask you, make sure we touch on everything. They are a huge favorite. Is there anything to glean from a guy like Benson, or is that just a play amongst many plays on the slate?
Three-way committee.
That's not drinking that
Toafili.
caffeine.
Yeah, apparently. Toafili's the pass catching back, which hurts Benson, and then Rodney Hill's a change of pace. So it's three-way at best. You kind of need Benson to fall in the end zone a couple times at this price, which I don't like. He would be a large field tournament option at best.
On the other side, probably playing catch up is Syracuse. Schrader, we know that he can move, but against a front like this, maybe it's not great. We saw against North Carolina, the touchdown equity for this team as a whole could be very low. Is there something out there with Jones and Alford on the outside? Is there anything from Syracuse that's really caught your attention?
Hard to play Syracuse. Don't have a lot of interest in Schrader, especially in tougher matchups. He has to get there with his legs because he doesn't do a lot with his arm. And it's one of the toughest matchups he's faced all year. They got crushed by North Carolina, and this is a tougher matchup than what we just saw. Receivers also tough, I think. Isaiah Jones is coming back from injury, so that muddles the Donovan Brown, Umari Hatcher, Damian Alford trio we've been seeing, and then they rotate tight ends. Dan Villari would be the tight end you probably look at, but I think for the most part, you're just not playing any Syracuse pass game because of the Isaiah Jones situation muddling this. LaQuint Allen, I think, is still live at 6,100. Not quite the value play we've seen in recent weeks because his price is coming up, but the guy's on the field every snap. And last week, honestly, it got so bad that they started using Juwan Price. In semi-competitive games, that doesn't happen. It's all LaQuint Allen. So I still think he's fine. You can play LaQuint Allen. He'd be the preferred run back.
So favorite plays from this game, to sum it up, it's mostly Travis with the pass catchers?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep it moving. We got a lot of games, and we're going to get through all of them. This is not the most glamorous games. And one thing I did want to point out, I don't know if it's just the weather. Look at those totals on the left side of your screen. It is not, this is an NFL style total. Like, you don't see the 73s, the 68s out there. They're really more methodical. So a 43-point total seems bad, but it's in line with a lot of games. And I'm talking about Iowa State and Cincinnati. I'm really not a fan of Iowa State. They keep accidentally winning games. It's going to cost me my win total. I don't think they're going to win here, but they might. Are they viable for DFS, or is this still mostly a write-off?
I think you can actually look at Rocco Becht if you're playing either Penix or Nix. He is a key that could potentially open up some salary for you. I don't love him as a play, and I think there's other guys I'd rather punt with, but he's at least in the conversation. He's actually been better recently. If you look at the full body of work for Becht, it's not ideal, but he's played better, and he doesn't take a ton of sacks. He's only taken 2 the whole year. The backfield's a complete mess. It's a 4-way committee. Receivers pretty condensed. It's Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, and then they rotate everyone else, tight ends, wide receiver 3s. So the stacks are pretty clear, and I think you can actually use a run back with Higgins or Noel, but it's only a price thing. This team, I agree with you, they're not very attractive on paper, but because of the pricing, some of these value plays could be used. I still prefer others, though.
And you mentioned some of the potential value plays. It looks like, from what I can see, they're not anything in this Iowa State backfield to take notice of.
No. There's 4 guys they're going to use.
Okay. So yeah, that's just completely useless to us. On the other side of this game, Emory Jones, he's always an interesting guy because I do think you have the option maybe to build a little different and go naked with him. Is that the type of build you're looking at? Is Cincinnati in play? He's obviously got the mobility. What is the best options when you break down the Bearcats?
Yeah, he doesn't project that well because the game total's pretty low, but Emory Jones has a skill set we generally would like. So for contrarian builds, I don't hate Emory Jones. Already has 280 rush yards on the year. Fantastic dual threat ability. The offense is pretty fast. They're 51st in pace, so that's allowed him to still throw 32 times per game. Iowa State has actually played pretty good defense, especially against the pass. So the matchup's not clean. The total's low, but for tournaments, you could use Emory Jones. I like stacking him because it's so condensed. It's Xavier Henderson, Braden Smith, D. Wiggins. Those are the only three guys basically that run routes. They aren't really expensive either. Still contrarian plays. This would be just an option for tournaments, but I'm not Xing out Cincinnati plays. I think maybe the most interesting guy to talk about here is Corey Kiner in the backfield because of his price at 5,200. If we don't get the Trevion Henderson news, you're going to be debating between Devin Maccabee, Corey Kiner, a few guys in this range. And we still haven't seen Ryan Montgomery return from injury. I don't know if that happens. But Kiner leads a backfield that's also comprised of the two Montgomerys. Kiner still should be somewhere between 15 to 20 touches. So he's a pretty good play in this range, especially if you're like me and you don't like clicking Devin Maccabee as nearly a 3-touchdown underdog. Kiner, I think, is the best play in the whole game.
Do you have any Emory Jones with Kiner?
No.
Okay.
The only quarterback I'm using, or excuse me, the only running back I'm using with a quarterback is Dylan Johnson for Washington.
Okay, fair enough. Keep it going, and I'll tell you guys, we got some exciting stuff going around the industry, but we'll get to one more game before I tell you that, and it's the SEC, but man, this is different tiers because poor Arkansas, they can't catch a break because they play in the West. It's just tough game after tough game in Tuscaloosa, nearly a 3-touchdown underdog. We've seen Sanders and Jefferson. They're doing what they can. They're battling, but it's just tough. I thought they played really well last week in Oxford, and they really weren't able to get it going. KJ Jefferson, 17 attempts for 11 yards on the ground. Talk to me about Arkansas and what we can expect here against the Tide defense.
Yeah, much different team than last year, and a lot of it has to do with this O-line. It was pretty negligent that they didn't even try to add a guy in the portal after losing 3 starters. So you mentioned the rushing. It's not that KJ Jefferson isn't mobile. He's just taking a lot of sacks, and he's under pressure constantly. So a lot of the rushing upside we've seen in previous years has been mitigated by sacks taken, which is really tough to play. And I think this is the best pass rush he's faced all year in Alabama. Very, very good pass rush on the other side. They're going to get home against Jefferson. And then his price tag is awful. He's priced way up, 7,700. This guy should probably be like 6'5", and then I might consider him. So I'm not playing Jefferson. You can use the receivers as runbacks if you're stacking Milroe or something, or just using like McClellan for a skinny stack. Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Tesla are the two very clear options. And then you FanDuel players out there, Ty Washington's really cheap over there. DraftKings did a pretty good job with his price tag. He's the backup tight end, but Luke Haas is out. So immediately he came in and played about 80% of the routes. Really good route share for him. 7 targets in his debut. I'm going to call it his debut because he'd been rotational before that. But DraftKings, they've got their finger on the pulse of the slate. No discounts on him here, but FanDuel is a better play. Like the previous matchup, I think the backfield might be the best place to look for both of these teams. And I still have been making bets on Raheem Sanders. This is a risky bet because it's not only that he's splitting the work a little bit, and I think that's injury related, but they've just been getting killed. So he's been game scripted out a lot. But he's 5,700. It's an affordable price tag if you think they hang in there.
It's Sanders or pass, though, right? There's no one else on Arkansas in the backfield garnering enough to be a pay down option.
Right.
Okay. On the other side of the game, Alabama's Alabama. Milroe's back in control of this team. We know about the mobility. He did take a ton of some negative yardage plays against A&M, but that's an outlier. He's $8,400 on DraftKings. Where does he fall in the QB rankings today?
He's middling, and it's largely because of the total in the game, 46.5. But they're still nearly 3-touchdown favorites, so the team total on Bama is pretty good. The problem I have with Milroe is the offense isn't utilizing, I guess I should say maximizing his skill set. His designed rush attempts the last 3 games have been 11, 3, and 1. Some of those more competitive than others, but this game doesn't project to be competitive. They're neutering their offense, and they're not using Milroe's rushing ability in games where they're firmly in control. They're very willing to just ride Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams. So while the upside is clear, Milroe's one of the best rushers in the country, there's also a clear downside because they're not using that when they're killing teams. So very, very good tournament play, but you just have to know that the floor could bottom out on Milroe at any point because of the offense. They don't really have a clear pecking order in receiver. So even though you see Bond with 9 targets and Burton with 12 last game, their route shares are barely touching 70% on a week-to-week basis. And even the game prior, the last 2 games, Burton has 2 targets and Bond has 4. That was before last week. So, I mean, we've seen the floor on these guys. I wouldn't be buying in just based on what we saw in the most recent contest. Again, the backfield might be the best place to look. Jace McClellan, he leads a committee that's about a 70-30 split between him and Roydell, but they're massive favorites over Arkansas. And they're very willing to just ride the run when they're playing from ahead. I think McClellan's my favorite play in the whole game.
Is he cash viable?
I don't think so, but if you had
Does it
something
hinge on
where he
Ohio
was like the
State at
last
all?
guy. Sorry?
Does it hinge on Ohio State news, or he's on the outside regardless?
I think he's on the outside regardless.
Fair enough. Anything else from this game?
No.
Okay. Well, 3 down, 9 to go. But we've been talking about already. Every time we bring up college football, first thing I always mention is Superflex, because the ability to play 2 quarterbacks is A, wild, and B, an unsolved format. Owner's Box has brought that to the NFL side. If you haven't been over there, again, a couple different things that you need to know. One, of course, we've partnered up with them. We've been doing a lot. Our tools are gauged towards them. So if you've seen the talk about our revamp tools and the Sims tools and things like that, and you want to test them out, the best way to do that is actually to use the link and deposit on Owner's Box. If you deposit, you're going to get the 500 bonus match on your first deposit up to $500. You can put in that much. You can put in $40, $20, whatever you want. You're also going to get a free week of our NFL Sims Max tools. So you're going to be able to use our tools to help you build on a site that's brand new to you, that's unsolved, that has overlay. A lot of opportunities over on Owner's Box. Again, we couldn't be more excited about it. With NBA coming up, a whole new series of sports. Check it out. See what you think. Again, if nothing else, you get to test drive our tools for free for a week, and you get that deposit match. So really, really shout out to Owner's Box. Go sign up there. Link is below. You'll enjoy that because I'll be talking about it tomorrow with Spags on the Live Before Lock show. But now we get to the real sacrificial lamb of the slate. Vanderbilt, 32.5-point underdogs at home. What have you done? Georgia is here, so I get it. This is like week 1 mentality where we're talking about, how do you go about this with Georgia? Is this no one can get there, or there's 5 touchdown equity in 1/2?
Yeah, I like Georgia. I actually like them more than FSU in the game that's similar, beat down potential, because Georgia's been beating down teams all year. They've had a couple that have remained close, but their pass rate is still 52.5%. I think they're working through some things in games like this, and they're not just taking the same vanilla game plan that Bama does, where they slam Jace McClellan into the back of the O-line 17 times. They're actually throwing the ball and working through some of their progressions with a young signal caller, which I think is smart. If you're going to be playing for a national title, which they have aspirations to do, you need to work these things out. So that makes me interested in Beck. He's not taking a lot of sacks. He's not the most mobile, but only 3 sacks on the year. He's not going to get you negative yards. He's averaging 316 through the air per game, and he's priced considerably cheaper than some of the other elite signal callers. So Beck, he stands out. He's got my attention. He's hard to stack outside Brock Bowers, so I'm just probably going to use Bowers in all those lineups. Bowers has like a 95% route share when games are somewhat close. This is teetering on the, I don't know if the starters play the whole game territory, but Bowers is averaging 10 targets per game in the last 4, and he's clearly involved when games are close. Outside of that, it's very nasty. Ra Thomas actually has the second most routes on the team, but Dominic Lovett, he could play more at any point. Ladd McConkey's back now. We'll see how this shakes out. And then the backfield, the fear I had with Milton back last week was that this would diverge into a committee, which is what it was last year, and that's exactly what happened. So DeJuan Edwards, Kendall Milton should be a 50-50 timeshare. Really tough to play those guys, but a Beck Bowers stack I do like.
Do you have any Beck without Bowers?
No.
Okay, so that basically comes preloaded that if you are going to Beck, you need at least Bowers, in your opinion.
I think so. There's some cheap guys you can maybe look at for value. Like a Dylan Bell plays a decent amount. He probably needs to catch a long one on the 2 targets he's going to get. But yeah, Bowers, very clear stack.
Now, probably the only time I get to do this, I get to mention my guy, and you know who this is. Looks like Ken Seals is going to take the reins today and show Georgia what it's all about. He's $5,300. There is a chance that he finishes with negative points. And for that reason, I assume that he would not be playable. Is there anyone on Vanderbilt that is playable?
Maybe a receiver as a run back because they throw so much, but none of them are priced well. So even that I don't like. But poor Ken Seals, They came out of the
My
media and
God.
they're like, hopefully Ken Seals plays well enough to earn the job moving forward. I'm like, what is the expectation for Ken Seals against Georgia? What would be playing well enough for him to earn the job the rest of the year against Georgia? Anyway, I don't know. That doesn't
Just
matter.
living, surviving.
Yeah,
All
don't
about
get hurt.
survival today.
But this isn't important to today's slate, but they're starting to give their freshman running back Cedric Alexander more work. If they weren't 33-point underdogs, I'd have interest, but that's the world we live in.
It is the world we live in. Let's see. Any couple of punt play, like, do you see merit to going to like Muse or Delp in a game like this?
I do not.
Okay. Can Vandy keep it close at all? I would say, I think the spread's about accurate. 4 touchdowns to 6 touchdowns would be my guess.
I think so.
This is interesting. Beck Bowers, same price as Travis and Wilson. Who's Wilson?
Johnny Wilson?
But
I don't know. He's out today.
Yeah, maybe Roman Wilson.
Oh yeah, I'm not playing a ton of Roman Wilson.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else from this game? Again, when you've got a situation like this, it seems pretty ugly.
Yeah, nothing else to say.
Okay. Well, we hate talking about 32.5-point spreads. So let's move to the next game where Michigan's a 33-point favorite. No problem here. That's my lucky number. 45.5-point total. Another disgraceful showing. Indiana secretly might be even worse than I thought. I guess we can get them out of the way first. Camper's got a Q tag. Does that even matter? Is there anyone on Indiana that's even worth a share, even in large field tournaments?
No, we can make this easy. Don't play anyone in Indiana.
Okay. Who we got for Indiana? Yeah, I can't even point out anyone. There's no one cool enough to get a mention. On the other side, JJ McCarthy. He's not needed at times. You look at the attempts. 20, 16, 21, 13, 25. That doesn't give you a ton of ceiling equity. He's a little mobile. Does that make him kind of unplayable in tournaments at 8,100? Or do you see games or ways where he gets you bonuses and he taps into that ceiling?
Yeah, Michigan just neuters their offense so much where I don't have a lot of interest in them. We've talked about Roman Wilson a lot, and I think you and I both really like him as a player.
He's a player.
Yeah, he's awesome. The problem is they need to be tested for him to get more than 4 targets. So he needs to be pushed, and you're not going to see them pushed until November. So it's kind of just Corum, Edwards, or pass for me outside of the cheap guys. Like Loveland is a cheaper play at 44, but even that, really thin. I think you could just play maybe a contrarian Corum at 84 or Edwards today because Khalil Mullings is out. He's been there, change of pace back in blowouts. But yeah, it's rough for these Michigan backs.
Nothing with like Johnson on the outside as well. He's kind of in that mid-range. He's the tier between Wilson and Loveland.
Yeah, I think so. Not too much interest.
Yeah, who gets the garbage time run for Michigan, frankly? I don't think any of those guys garner enough to be playable.
Agreed.
It's ugly. Remember that Milrow is not on the field for pregame warmups. Well, hopefully he's around. We'll keep an eye on that. I don't even need to ask you. You didn't bet this, did you?
No.
Okay.
Jalen Milrow's not? Is that what you said?
Chat said rumor that Milrow is not on the field for pregame warmups, but I haven't seen anything major on that.
Yeah, me either. And I have a very good Twitter list. So no one of consequence has reported it.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll just say.
Well, you never know. If Milrow's out, I'm not playing anyone at Bama other than McClellan.
Yeah, that would consolidate.
Buckner season.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We will see. All right. This is another big spread, but it's not to the level of what we've been talking about. Ohio State and Purdue. So first of all, Ohio State last week, I don't know if you were paying attention. There was a couple moments where I thought, are they actually going to lose the game? It was a little dicey early. McCord wasn't great, but he kind of turned it on late. He found what he should do, which is Marvin Harrison early and often. What do you think today? I know the backfield news. You can update us on that, but just talk to me about Ohio State in general.
Yeah, no update so far, sadly. But McCord has not been good. He just plays for an awesome offense. So you could use him like you would use a Beck, like you would use a Travis, but he's just not as good as those players. And he doesn't run at all. He's only taken 3 sacks and he still has negative 10 rushing yards, which is mind blowing to me. So the floor is really low on McCord. He needs a 300-yard bonus. And I don't know what they do without Ibuka. Like, that doesn't help McCord. It certainly helps Marvin Harrison, who he's expensive, but he's live to break a slate at any point. So for tournaments, Marvin's a good play. He's pretty affordable on FanDuel too. Other than that, Stover, he might honestly be your second pass catcher at tight end. 4,900 is a decent price. But I think they're going to move to Julian Fleming as the 2 and Xavier Johnson as the 3. You probably see these guys rotate a little bit with like 5-star freshman Carnell Tate. It's pretty rough for Ohio State. Beyond Harrison and Stover, the backfield's the key. We don't know if Henderson's playing. If he's out, Mine Williams immediately jumps. Maybe a top 2 running back play on the slate. He should be in your cash lineup for sure.
I mean, it is an early game, so I assume we'll get some inkling. If you don't know, if there is no word, what are you going to do with the Ohio State backfield?
I'm not going to play Henderson, and I'm going to play a little bit of Chip.
Okay. Do you think, I mean, I totally have done this before. I think it's always viable. If Henderson plays, are those lineups dead in your opinion, or you still have outs with Chip regardless?
It all depends on how healthy Henderson is. Like, is he gutting through an injury? Is he limited? We won't know. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything with like Fleming?
You could play Fleming in tournaments.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll wait on the news. We'll do the best we can there. On the other side, Hudson Card, he is on the other side with Becht and Ken Seals and the cheapies. Is he playable though at 5,200? Could he be that second quarterback for you, or are there just other lineup constructions that you're looking to that don't involve punting with a guy like Card?
So they've got a million injuries and guys questionable that we didn't know about ahead of time. And Abdur Rahman Yassin might not play. I X'd him out because of these injuries.
Okay. So does that take his pass catchers on the outside out of play as well? Or can you go with a one-off of the guys who are supposed to be in uniform for Purdue?
I think it takes them all out of play.
Okay.
So you could maybe use like a Burks as a one-off or a Sheffield as a one-off.
Yeah.
But Abdur Rahman Yassin is questionable. And then the tight end, I mean, they priced up Garrett Miller a decent amount. But Ohio State's defense is elite. They're like the top 4 unit in the country. Hudson Card takes a ton of sacks. He does run too, but now he's down like multiple offensive starters. This could get ugly fast for Purdue, and they're hard to project right now because a lot of this news is late. So Ohio State's been just getting hammered in the betting market. I don't know if we have an accurate line yet on this team. Like, it might close around 21 or like maybe even get up to like, I don't know, beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, it's bouncing around. I haven't seen it test 21 yet, but again, you can always oddchopper.com for that. Keep an eye on it.
Before we move on, somebody just tweeted that Henderson's not in pads. The Ohio State beat. So this Chip Trayanum is a cash play now.
Is he the best running back on the slate?
Yeah.
Okay. That answers that. Henderson out, not in pads now. Maybe he's just not going to play with pads. He's just going to go bold. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Anything else? Yeah, exactly. You mentioned the injuries for Purdue. What does that do to the backfield? Is Maccabee the last man standing and he's going to have 25 touch upside? Or is it just, it doesn't matter, the inefficiency is too great?
Yeah, he's going to have 25 touch upside. I mean, they gave it to him last week. Tracy went out early, and then we saw Maccabee touch the ball 20 times inefficiently. And I mean, we've seen Purdue lose games already this year and still just force feed him. It's like they don't even care that they're trailing and they know they're going to lose and don't really try to get back in games. So you're probably looking at least 15 inefficient carries for Maccabee, but I think he's a much worse play now that Chip opened up. I have a lot of Maccabee before. I just ran my first crunch with Chip. Brought Maccabee all the way down to 15%. I'm probably going to end up somewhere around like 30-ish%, maybe more of Chip.
Last question for this game. With Chip obviously emerging, are you comfortable having Chip and Harrison with no McCord in lineups?
I guess if you're like using an optimizer, you shouldn't get that much because Harrison doesn't project particularly well, but I don't hate that.
Okay. Just because that's a lot of touchdown equity. I don't really hate that either. It is a little dicey, but I just wanted to mention that. All right, we're halfway home, and look at that. It's 11:30. That is what we call timing. California and Utah. Cal hits the road, 10.5-point underdogs, taking on that Utah defense, a methodical total. Credit where credit is due. Cal's not that bad. I know they're bad, but they're not that bad. And I really thought they would struggle this year. But what are we looking at here? They've had a little quarterback roulette, some injuries and whatnot. How does this Cal offense shape up today?
They started freshman Fernando Mendoza, which is awesome. He's a really high recruit. And Ben Finley can't throw, not because like he runs or anything. He just can't do anything. And then Sam Jackson can't throw. He's a running back playing quarterback. So now Fernando can run, and he is a really highly recruited freshman. So I think he can throw more than these guys. I don't buy Utah's defense still, but it's a tough matchup for Fernando's second start. Their team total is really low. And what I really look to with him is I think it gives more life to Jeremiah Hunter and Taj Davis at pass catcher. I don't hate these guys as one-offs. So I think you can use them situationally if you're running like 150. I'm playing some Jeremiah Hunter and Taj Davis because I'm just betting on the freshman who's kind of elevated the offense. Jaden Ott has had really weird opportunity. Last week's game wasn't like a complete blowout, and he only had 13 carries, and they gave Isaiah Ifanse, however you say his name, he had 11 carries. So like fresh off a 29 carry game, Ott's down to 13. I don't know if he's fully healthy. He was injured earlier this year. Enough risk where I'd rather go down and play some cheap backs and stack the elite offenses. But yeah, it's a little tough out here for these Cal guys until we see what the quarterback really has to offer.
Speaking of what he has to offer, do we know about again, I don't know anything about this guy. I'm just looking kind of at that box score. How much of his upside is mobility?
He is mobile. It's tough with the small sample. So
he's not like Plumlee mobile, is he?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I also don't think he's like a pure statue.
Yeah, I just, in terms of skinny stack, +2, running him naked, it seems like he's kind of in the middle where he can get you some yards, but you still want pass catchers. Is that fair?
That's what I am using as like a baseline for him. Yeah.
Okay. On the other side,
here we go.
Every week, I honestly think every single week we've said this. Cam Rising, it seems like he's not going to play. Is that how you're treating the Utah quarterback situation?
Yep.
So where does that leave us? They are slight double digits favorite at home. How does Utah attack this Cal defense?
Well, they're using two quarterbacks, so I'm not playing anyone from Utah in the pass game. There is a late news situation that I think could be advantageous if you're willing to take on the risk. They're down Chris Curry and Micah Bernard, and then Jaquindon Jackson's questionable. They've been moving defenders to the running back position in practice, so you can tell they're very, very thin there. Jalen Glover is going to handle a monster workload if Jaquindon's out. So I purposely boosted him. And if Jaquindon plays, these lineups are probably just going to be dead. But I don't think a lot of people are going to play him, and it's worth the risk in some capacity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see Jackson against Oregon State. So, and he is the only, like, if he does sit, it's really Glover consolidating that entire backfield.
They don't have anyone else.
Okay. Well, that makes it easy. You mentioned two quarterbacks, Parks, Vele, Matthews, these types. It's just no chemistry on the outside, can't play them.
It's going to be half the snaps with, I don't know, Bryson Barnes and half with Nate Johnson. But I think there's considerable downside and not enough upside.
Anything else from this game? It seems like it's one of the lower ones on the old Rolodex here. Not great.
Yeah, that would be the correct take.
We did have a question going backwards about Ja'Cory Brooks for Alabama. It looks like he may give it a go. Do you care about that?
No.
Okay. That makes it easy then.
Yeah, sorry, not to be so brief.
No, listen, we want to know that. That's what it's all about. Sometimes these guys are not relevant to the DFS slate. And we'll talk about the betting streets. Again, I have, don't worry, I've got an exciting betting offer coming up in a little while for some of you people in certain states. Now, I bet this game. Speaking of betting, I bet Kansas today. I like them. I don't like Oklahoma State. Not a fan of that team. I got it wrong with Kansas State, so Kansas will have to go revenge mode for them. What are we doing with Kansas in this offense? So it looks like it's Bean's team right now. He's serviceable. He can do some things. Is he playable kind of in a middling quarterback price tag?
Yeah, I love Bean. And he was an awesome play last week until they decimated UCF so bad where they didn't need to use him. He literally had like 12 pass attempts and he ran the ball 6 times for 10 yards. Talk about a neutered offense. And it wasn't because of Bean. Like, we've seen a large sample of Bean, so I'm not worried about this unless they absolutely beat the bricks off this team. But it's a 3-point spread, so that's not projected to be the case. In a competitive game environment, Bean has been efficient as a passer. He's over 8 yards per attempt. And then he's over 5 yards per carry in his career. Like, this guy has excellent mobility. All we need is a close game where they can't just take their foot off the gas and run like Daniel Highshaw 19 times. Bean's also priced to play. I think he's one of the best cash options on this slate because of the dual threat ability combined with his price. He's one of the few quarterbacks I'm not requiring a stack with because it's not only the mobility is great, but they run a pretty nasty rotation at receiver that they've expanded even beyond just what we saw last year with Grimm and Arnold and Skinner. They're now using like Tanaka and Fairchild at tight end. There's more guys involved than there ever has been. So it's tough, I think, to stack Bean, and I'm not requiring it.
If you did, if say you wanted to go skinny with him, is it Arnold?
Arnold's my favorite. Grimm is my second favorite.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I would say as well. You mentioned the backfield and slamming the ball into that line. How viable of a strategy is that, though, with Neal? Like, if you don't get to Bean and maybe a pass catcher, do you have interest in the Kansas backfield?
Yeah, we saw Daniel Highshaw get a ton of work last week. I think that's just because they were slaughtering UCF. So we've seen Neal operate as the bell cow. Again, it's like Bean, where I think you are relying on this game remaining somewhat close for this to occur. But 3-point spread, I'm going to fall back on that. It's probably like a 70-30 committee in competitive games. And Neal does handle pass game work. So I think he's still a solid play. Little expensive for this slate, but that's fine with me. I like Neal quite a bit.
On the other side of this game, again, in Stillwater, credit to Alan Bowman and this Cowboys team. They looked okay. They managed to hold on. I did not see that coming. They did lose. They played. I was pestering you before the game about this. They played without Stribling, their top end wideout, and it looks like he is not going to be back anytime soon. Does that make Jaden Bray kind of solidified on the outside? And then what else for Oklahoma State do we need to take notice of?
Yeah, Bray's solidified on the outside. The biggest change in role came from Rashad Owens, who is 3,500. He's the best value play on the slate, immediately over 82% of the routes. If you think this role persists, which I do, he is the single best value play on the board. You can play him without hesitation, which I am. One of my most exposed receivers, honestly, at this point. I'm not really that worried about the role changing. It's just offensive inefficiency is the biggest worry. But I mean, they're 43rd in pace. They pass 56% of the time. I don't even think they need to be that efficient. He could get there on, 6 catches for 40 yards. That's 10 points at 3,500. That'll definitely do something for you. He had 7 targets. So I like Rashad Owens a lot. If you're paying up to be contrarian, it's Bray, it's Presley. Those are the guys you want to look at.
And then where does Ollie Gordon fit in? This is a guy that's shown they'll give him the ball 20, 25 times in that backfield. Does he get phased out if they fall behind? It's a competitive spread. How does he shake up amongst the running backs today?
We've got a 2-game sample of him now just being a monster. And
really
we've seen, they've done this a ton in the past with Oklahoma State. You can go back to Chuba. You can go back to, who's the guy on the Ravens now? Forget his name. Justice Hill. Yeah, they did it with him. They even did it with the guy on Pittsburgh. I don't know why I'm forgetting NFL names, but the guy who was playing over Najee.
Oh, Jalen Warren?
Yeah, all of them were monster feature backs. So there's a long history of Gundy doing this. And what I like most is Ollie Gordon's route share rose above 60%. So in the event that they get down in games, he's still in the field catching passes. And the guy had 5 targets in their second most recent game. So he's live in all game scripts. I like Ollie Gordon. I think he's a top 3 running back play on the slate. Kansas, for everything they've done well on defense, they're still allowing nearly 5 yards per carry to opposing rushers. So good matchup for Gordon as well. I don't know why I can't remember NFL backs. Sorry, guys.
That's all. I almost said Anthony McFarland, who A, I think isn't even on the Steelers anymore, and B, he went to Maryland. So let's not have me answer these questions. We do have some questions from chat though. FanDuel Cash, Leggett or Polk?
Polk.
You have a healthy amount of chip in your 150s, right? It's not just cash.
Yeah, I haven't fully solidified this yet, but right now he's at 45%. Yeah.
Best wide receiver under 5K on DraftKings.
Aeneas Smith.
Like that. Bean or Max Johnson?
Bean.
Look at Jasper Smith. He's on it. Owens. Boom. Nailed it. Is Gordon cash viable? That's interesting. We know that Chip, of course, is going to take one of those spots. Do you think that Gordon could factor in as another running back?
I'd rather play Dylan Johnson, but he's the third guy I would put in that ranking. So if it's a price thing, you, for whatever reason, you end up on Ollie Gordon. I don't dislike that.
Let's get to the game. I would assume.
Okay. One thing, Utah's got a good beat, and their beat reporter just reported that Jaquindon Jackson is expected to play today. That takes Glover out of play, I think.
Is Jackson in play, or you don't want to mess around with the guy coming off an ankle?
Dude, I don't. The guy's a warrior. Props to him, but he keeps aggravating it in games. He's come back from this injury twice already and hurt it twice in a row. Like, I don't know. Maybe he's good to go there coming off a bye, but there is a lot of risk for re-injury.
Yeah, it is kind of dicey. Can you play Gordon and Owens together?
Sure.
Yeah, I like that too. You're consolidating.
It's a price thing. Like, yeah, you're not spending any money.
Yep, exactly. It's like 9K for both of them. All right, let's get to the game. I think College Game Day's there. I honestly don't know. I would assume they are. Oregon and Washington, huge game in the Pac-12. 3-point spread, healthiest total on the board. Let's get to it. The Ducks, Bo Nix, Bucky Irving. I mean, these guys got dudes. Franklin on the outside. How much salary are you willing to allocate to this Oregon team?
Well, if you play three guys, you're going to allocate a ton of it. So I'll try to prioritize these guys. If you can find your way up to Nix and Penix, they have elite ceilings. So I'm still trying to do that in a portion of my lineups. For cash, I'd want to play Nix if you can. Don't like sacrifice and make something egregious to get this in there. But Nix has the best floor ceiling combo to any quarterback, I think. Maybe in the country, not named Jaden Daniels. We haven't seen him rush this year. The guy rushed for 14 scores and over 500 yards last year. They've only played in one competitive game. So this is surely going to rise in spots that are tight like this one is. So love Nix. I like him more than Penix because he runs. Penix does not. But otherwise, there's really good options across the board. If you're playing an expensive stack, get Troy Franklin. He's one of the best receivers in the country, averaging 107 yards per game. There's also cheap guys. Gary Bryant played over 80% of the routes last game. That came directly at the expense of Tej Johnson. Bryant is 5K. This is a cheaper stack you can get to that makes you feel better about Oregon. And then there are three. Trayshawn Holden even played more than Tej Johnson. He would be the guy ranked third there, 4,600. If you're playing one lineup, find the 400 to get to Bryant. But you can make a lot of different kinds of stacks, expensive stacks, cheap stacks, which is why I think you still want exposure here. Then Bucky Irving, the question is, with Whittington out, does more work go to Irving, or do they use Jordan James in the Whittington role? I don't have the answer to that, but Bucky Irving is a good price-adjusted play. Even in the previous role, he's a monster efficiency-wise, and he's a great pass catcher. Then if you think Jordan James is just an afterthought and Bucky handles a feature back role, even at 7,500, he's an elite play.
You see it on our screen there again, all part of the packages, our ownership, the projections, all that stuff. You can get in the links below if you're interested in signing up. Just a lot of information, a lot of interest in this Oregon game. I want to backtrack before we get to Washington. Raheem Sanders is out. Does that help much?
That's sad.
Yeah.
Probably good for him, though. They don't need him.
Yeah. No, you
now I
don't
got to change more stuff, though.
Yeah,
Great.
to get destroyed by Alabama.
Lovely.
Certainly, though. Oregon, you mentioned them. I know you'll be adjusting, but if you can also talk about the Washington Huskies and this elite passing attack. I mean, Penix, they might have to make the rare 400-yard bonus for this guy. The guy is out of control. We know they're going to be throwing the ball. We'll see how Oregon secondary can hold up. I mean, this is up there as well. Polk, McMillan, Udunzi. What are you doing with Washington?
Love Washington. I think the conversation is almost identical between Nix and Penix. I just have a slight preference Knicks' direction because he can run, but this isn't a slight to Penix. You mentioned the upside. The guy's literally averaging 400 yards per game. This is by far his toughest matchup, so that should be at least noted, but still an elite play. They pass the ball almost every single play. Easy to stack. O'Doones is my favorite. Jalen McMillan coming back, I think, muddles things a little bit. Prior to the injury, you saw only one player with 100% route share. That was O'Doones. McMillan, Polk, they were around 70, and Jeremy Bernard was around 35-ish, 40 in certain games. So I think the safest is O'Doones. There's upside with them all, but I'm a little worried about Jeremy Bernard playing so well in the absence of McMillan that now you maybe just see the wide receivers 2 through 4 rotate more than you'd really think. So for me, the safest guy to get to is O'Doones. The rest are just really good tournament options.
Would you rather have O'Doones or Franklin?
O'Doones, but it's very close. O'Doones just has better volume and an offense that passes more.
Last question on this game. I know it's a pass first, pass second, pass third offense. What about Dylan Johnson in the backfield?
So he had a monster workload last game, which I've been waiting for all year, but he was hurt to begin the year. So I think this is just easing him back into action. 16 carries, 5 targets, and he had a dominant snap share. You'd think that persists against Oregon. I mean, he played well. He didn't do anything to lose it. So I think Dylan Johnson is a top 3 running back play on the slate, and he's the only running back I'm willing to play with the quarterback.
Anything else in this game?
No, if you have a question, feel free to leave it, but I think that was pretty good.
Last spot, Superflex, Bean or McMillan? It would be Bean for me.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we'll get to the final 3 games. I didn't bet this game, but I do want to mention, do like making a little wagering. I'm going to name 6 states. If I hit your state, equals money. If I don't, I'm sorry. You ready? New Jersey, Colorado, Virginia, Ohio, Iowa, and Kentucky. What do they have in common? Maybe a couple other things, but the thing I'm thinking about is Bet365 is in your state. And what does that mean? It means that you're eligible for the Bet5, get 150 in bonus bets, win, lose, draw. It does not matter. If you're in one of those states, take some time, take a couple minutes out of your day to sign up and put a little money on Bet365. It's a good book. Certainly one that's been around forever. They've got all sorts of markets. Then bet $5. Get 150 in bonus bets. Have some fun with it. Maybe use it for parlays. Maybe use it to take some shots. Maybe use it to kind of hedge against your DFS lineups. There's all sorts of options that you can do. But I want to make sure that you're aware if you're in New Jersey, Colorado, Virginia, Ohio, Iowa, or Kentucky, you've got that opportunity. Got to be 21 plus. Only 18 in Kentucky. Play responsibly. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, down to the SEC. Not in College Station. We're going to Knoxville, but Texas A&M is on this against Tennessee. A very competitive game here. We've seen A&M battle Max Johnson. You have mentioned the turnover issues, but he does have Smith and Stewart on the outside. How playable are these Aggies in this game?
2 sneaky games for shootouts that we haven't gotten to yet, so these are ones I want to spend some time on. This is one. You've got Tennessee playing really fast. It's the speed of light offense. They're 3rd in the country in pace. And Texas A&M has varied their pace a ton. I think they're going to be coaxed into a fast game here. Tennessee's only played one competent team. That was Florida, with all due respect to their other opponents. But their defense looks solid on paper. This is like UCLA last week. I was wrong about this, but I don't think we have enough data points to properly evaluate the Tennessee defense. So Max Johnson, his efficiency is good as a passer. He just turns the ball over more than Connor Wegman. He runs a little bit, which is solid too. All this to say, I don't hate contrarian Max Johnson stacks at 6,500. I'm playing him with Aeneas Smith, who is, I think, the second most underpriced receiver on the slate behind Rashad Owens. And then Evan Stewart should pay up to be contrarian. He hasn't looked great recently. He's been hurt. Second most recent game, didn't even hit 50% of the routes, 3 targets. Last week, he was back above 90%. That should give you confidence if you're looking for a very contrarian elite player. It's Evan Stewart. Le'Veon Moss is also a very good running back play. He's taken on a lion's share of the work playing over Amari Daniels and Reuben Owens. He has at least 16 touches in 3 straight games. And again, I don't know how good Tennessee's defense is. He's behind Chip. He's behind Dylan Johnson. But for tournaments, I think you should be getting some exposure to Moss.
Any Johnson, Smith, Stewart together?
I don't think I have that. I have to go look at my exposures, but I do have just the skinny stacks.
Okay, yeah. And I'll just give a shout out to Aeneas Smith. Blues was asking, last man in on DK, 5,400 or less. I honestly think you could look to him in that spot.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a real good
Him
play.
Or Chip.
Yeah, him or Chip, certainly. And yeah, let's see if we can get over 100 likes here. We're rattling through all sorts of injury news today. And we appreciate you guys tuning in, subscribing to the channel, share the show, tell your people. We want to build this up here at Stochastic. I do want to ask you about the other side of this game, though, because Tennessee, we know that they're not afraid to get up and down. Kind of a lost team this year. Haven't heard much about them. And, they had some big losses on the outside. What's left of this offense, and where do they stack up amongst the 24 teams?
So they're favored. They play extremely fast. It's the offense that brought us Hendon Hooker. It's just Joe Milton's not that. He doesn't run as much, but he does have 133 cumulative rushing yards, 32 attempts per game. So the offense is going to propel him to some big scores. The problem is his price. FanDuel, I think he's more palatable. And I would rather just play like a run back to a Texas A&M stack, or maybe even just a one-off of a Tennessee guy. Brew McCoy is out. Bad injury, so prayers up to Brew. But Squirrel White is going to be your number one, 7.3 targets per game over the last 4, very efficient. Ramel Keaton's a possession receiver, but he's your 2. And I think Oregon transfer Dante Thornton is going to be the 3. He's 4,300 and a very good price adjusted play if you think he gets the wide receiver 3 role. I happen to think this, 3.5 targets per game for him on the year. We didn't get a chance to see him last week, potentially taking over the Brew McCoy role because he was hurt. But I think he does take it over here.
In this backfield, there's been kind of a mixed bag, and then Wright comes back. He was super busy against South Carolina. What do you expect? Does any of these guys garner enough work to be playable for Tennessee's backfield?
I'm not playing any of the 3. When functioning at full capacity, it's a 3-way committee.
Anything else from this game?
I don't think so.
Yeah, this is a competitive game. I just don't know really what else to say about it. I'm with you there. Healthy total, though, and the pace could be good. We'll get to Illinois right now, actually. Why not? There's 2 games left, and we're making good time. Illinois and Maryland. We got a 13-point spread here. I've had a couple questions from chat about this Illinois backfield. Why don't we start there? Talk to me about what's left and how playable now with the chip news is Illinois' backfield as we look to this game, one of the last 2 that we've got.
He's still playable because of pricing. So you might just need to go down and play a cheaper back because you want to get Knicks or Penix or a stack or something. So maybe you just don't have the salary to play one of these guys. We don't have Reggie Love or Josh McCray, so Caden Fagan is probably going to take over this backfield. There have been reports that he's going to lead with Aiden Lawfrey behind him. I think this makes sense. Previously, when these backs have been injured, they've had no issues inserting Fagan into the lineup, whereas Lawfrey, I don't know how to say his name. Sorry, Aiden. He only has 3 carries the whole year. So maybe you see this rotate a little bit because Illinois is 15th in pace. You can't just slam a guy into the O-line like 30 times. But he should have a pretty good workload. I'm anticipating. I don't feel amazing about it. Like, this could go a bunch of different ways, but projection-wise, they just don't have anybody else. He should see a pretty good workload.
Is Altmaier and the pass catchers in play, or are we really looking for this workload in the backfield?
So I think this is the second sneaky stack that we haven't talked about. Only a 51.5 total, but Illinois is 15th in pace. Maryland's 46th. Illinois 56% pass rate. Maryland 54. This game might get up and down a little more than you think. So Altmaier is in play because of price. He's a horrifying click, but he does run. He has 172 rush yards, and that's including 20 sacks. A lot of good rushing ability for Altmaier. 32 pass attempts per game. I'll say this, he's not the worst click. And then in the pass game, I mean, they funnel so many targets to Isaiah Williams. He's averaging 10.3 per game over the last 4. Double digits in 3 of the 4. Altmaier doesn't even need to be efficient for Isaiah Williams to get there at his price. He's like a top 5 receiver playing the slate. Floor-wise, you could question ceiling, like maybe a guy, even Jeremy Bernard or something, outscores them because of the offense he plays for. But yeah, Williams, very safe play. This is a pretty good game, I think.
Could Williams be the run back to Tagovailoa stacks on the other side? When you look at Maryland, when you look at the pass catchers, is that something maybe you're exploring?
Absolutely. Tagovailoa is running more than he has really ever at any point in his career. He's averaging 4 designed attempts over the last 3 games, which is wild. They've never done that with him. But then they still pass a ton, 53.5 attempts per game, 280 yards for Tagovailoa. And the one thing I really like about Maryland stacks today, last game, they condensed their route share. Log jam through the whole year. Last week, Ty Felton, Jayshon Jones, and Caden Prather all over 80% of the routes. That resulted in at least 7 targets for all of them. They're all mid-priced. I don't think there's a clear dominator in terms of targets among the three, but I think you feel pretty comfortable about all three at their prices. I tried to play a lot of the three, mixing and matching them, no preference to one over the other.
Anything else for Maryland in terms of the backfield?
Hemby's too expensive, I think.
All right, let's get to the final game. We got 5 minutes, but even if we only had 5 seconds, it wouldn't really matter. We would still get this in plenty of time because it's Iowa and Wisconsin. It's a 9.5-point spread, a 34.5-point total. So I believe there are multiple teams on the slate that have implied totals that might be more than this game total. That just kind of shows you where we're at. Caleb Johnson, whatever this quarter, what's his name? Deacon Hill?
Yeah, he's the former Wisconsin third string.
There we go. Deacon Hill, of course. What are we doing here? I assume the answer is we're not doing anything with Iowa.
Yeah, I'd honestly rather field questions. I'll be as brief as possible on this. X out Iowa. Maybe you play a contrarian air call, but this is a severe weather game. Wisconsin is bad weather all day. So even pass games are going to be affected. And then Iowa has an inept passing attack to begin with. For me, it's a contrarian Braylon Allen or Jackson Acker or pass. I don't think Acker is very viable today, considering all the value that opened up. Braylon might handle like 30 carries in a game like this. Inefficient because Iowa's defense is still Iowa's defense, and Braylon's expensive, but that about sums it up. X out the quarterbacks, X out the pass catchers. I think I have one share of Eric All. He is averaging 8 targets per game over the last 3. But again, what are you getting with those 8 targets? Very much an opportunity cost situation.
So to sum it up with these running backs on the slate, you have Chip 1. How would you kind of run down your top end running backs?
In no particular order, Chip, Gordon, Johnson. I think I honestly might put Johnson 1 because of the pass catching. Hope that helps.
Train him in a 20 max is 7 too much? I don't think at all.
Agreed.
That's fine.
He had
DK
20
Cash,
carries last week.
Yeah, he should be busy in his perfect game script. DK Cash, Anaya Smith and Holden or Moss and Bell?
Anaya Smith side.
Yes. He's one of the best plays on the board. Yeah, if you have questions, yes, there are confirmed 2 Tagovailoas. That's true. Any Caleb Johnson, that's going to be a no.
No, Wiggins, he's barely playing.
Wiggins or Bell?
Wiggins.
Is it smart to play running back in both flex spots?
Super flex? Probably
yeah,
not.
I don't. You can do it. I assume you have no issue with having 3 running backs, but you don't want 4.
Right.
Interesting question. Do you have any interest in having a game stack with Travis and Schrader?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So yeah, that could work. Travis, Coleman, Bell with the Schrader run back. It's a little awkward for sure, but large field tournaments, I think that's fine. Brock Bowers or Thomas?
Bowers.
DK Cash. We got Beck and Anaya Smith or JJ McCarthy and Isaiah Williams?
Not the McCarthy side.
Yeah, not the McCarthy side. I do really like Isaiah Williams, as do you, but Beck and Smith are 2 of the, I think, top plays on the slate. Johnson and Noel or Gordon and Holden?
Say that again?
Johnson. I'm not. Johnson could be.
I think it's Dylan Johnson.
There we go. Dylan Johnson and Noel or Gordon and Holden. See, now you're me and I'm you. You got the first names. Good job.
I like the Dylan Johnson side.
Any interest with Potier starting?
No.
Would you play McCourt over Bowman and Cash?
Yes.
Yeah. This is interesting because we talked about him. He's definitely a good play. Where does Bucky Irving rank?
He's an elite GPP play. He would be like somewhere in the RB 6 to 8 range just because of price.
Final, if you have 30 seconds for the people, and again, give it up for Matt here, just doing all this work. If you don't get to a question, Matt_Gajewski, any thoughts on FanDuel?
Play LSU. They're expensive, but they're still too cheap. Love Logan Diggs. You can play Daniels. There's a lot of value on FanDuel. So it might not look great in your lineups, but there's plenty of ways to make Daniels work. Same with Burden, same with Cook. I think they're all fine. Caleb Williams, I don't think you need to stack him over there. He's another good play. Drake May's on the slate. Play a healthy amount of him if you're running 150. There's so many elite quarterbacks over there. For me, the top guys I'm playing at QB, Bean, Daniels, Williams, Penix, Travis, Nix, Drake May. Running back is Amani Bailey, Chip Trainum, Logan Diggs, Ollie Gordon, Taj Brooks. Receivers, Burden, Neighbors, Squirrel White, Troy Franklin, Romo Dune, Xavier Restrepo. Not much tight end.
Poor Van Dyke. Can't even make the list. Tough scenes.
He doesn't run. That's the only reason.
My guy. He's playing for a coach that doesn't understand the simplistic things about kneeling the ball. But that is a great way to go out. We appreciate you guys, each and every one who stops in and supports this show. We have such a blast. We want to make sure, though, you're aware. Those links are below. Check it out in the description, whether you're on Bet365 or you're just looking to get more inside the ropes here with Stokastic. Get a package and sign up for Owner's Box. Another way to get tighter to our community and really be part of the team here. We really appreciate you guys. For me, for Matt, for the man that makes this show go, Jacob Roach behind the glass, we appreciate all you guys. Good luck. Enjoy your Saturday. Back next week, same time, same place.